I arrived at JFK, so I had to kind of make my way upstate on my own, and that was that was a bit stressful. I almost ended up losing my wallet, and
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Educative Sessions. My name is Lingle, and I am the community manager here with Educative. Educative makes it easy for authors to provide interactive and adaptive courses for software developers. And Educative Sessions is a multi-episodic campaign to engage people in the developer world about their coding experiences. My guest today is Taimur Khan, who is the founder and software lead with Adsata. And the topic we're going to discuss is finding my community, immigration, and technology. Taimur, welcome to the show.
thanks for having me, Lee.
All right, let's go ahead and jump right in. Let's start with your motivations for today and wanting to share your story. Where does it really begin, especially the immigration story?
Yeah, it's been about 8 years since I left Pakistan. It started right about when I started high school. So in Pakistan, you have three different educational systems. There's the English medium system where people, study in English. There's the Urdu medium system, which is Urdu medium studies, which are in the native language. And then there's like the more religious kind of schooling. I happened to be in the English medium schooling, and I had a lot of contact with English-speaking people. And I was always curious about, world outside of the boundaries that we were used to growing up. I've always tried to be objective and sort of just kind of tumbled into it. The whole idea of moving somewhere and then studying there. I applied to a bunch of colleges. I did a lot of sport. I ended up getting a scholarship at Skidmore College in New York.
What did you
And sorry,
What did you play to get the scholarship?
I played soccer. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I still do play soccer, but that was kind of the story. But it was more holistic. I was also doing a bit of work with environmental justice in the city of Karachi, where I was studying. I was also a bit into music, so I was always, doing my thing. And I think if I was to trace it back to a single moment, I think it was always the idea to be objective and to look at things from the outside. And I think that kind of drove me to leave and to kind of explore on my own.
Yeah, with such a wide range of interests and passions, and it's really hard to not want to see much more of the world and see what kind of opportunities you have in store there. And so, you left Pakistan and went to the US to study at Skidmore. And what were your initial challenges upon arriving to a new community and a new environment?
I was absolutely frightened, like when I was on that plane leaving, I was 18 years old and I was absolutely frightened. I was like, what did I do? Why am I doing this? But when I arrived, I remember I was from a big city, so Karachi is a huge city. My parents eventually moved to Lahore, so I was always, spending my time in bigger cities. But arriving in New York for the first time was quite overwhelming. Some of the challenges when I arrived first was
Skidmore's not in a big area. Like that's a bit more of a
no, but I arrived at JFK, so I had to kind of make my way upstate on my own, and that was that was a bit stressful. I almost ended up losing my wallet, and the taxi I was taking, the cab driver, she was quite nice to hand it over to me. I think that was kind of like a reassuring moment. It was like, hey, it's just people; they can help you out.
good.
So some of the challenges I had were more to do with kind of adjusting to a new system completely, educationally, socially, and being 18 and having other 18-year-olds around me who, are also starting out with their journeys and, are leaving home and trying to kind of find their way. We're also not so much aware of the process to kind of, do things that kind of matter, applying for taxes, getting your tax returns or getting your driver's license completely on your own without any guidance. And those things were kind of daunting in the beginning. But I think I had a good community around me that ended up helping me and to make me feel comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really glad you're mentioning all these things because I'm American and I went to school also on the East Coast. My closest friend and roommate was from Hong Kong
Mm.
and also an Australian citizen. And I didn't realize until we learned a lot more about each other how different the experiences are for international students and the loopholes they might have to jump through and the red tape and it just, in fact, even the access to certain kinds of opportunities are
Mm.
not the same. While at the same time they're counted as equal students, there's a
Mm.
bit of a disconnect there, right?
Mm.
So let's talk specifically about your experiences with the technology community,
Mhm.
starting from Skidmore and also getting over to where you are in Germany now, right? Like,
Mhm.
tell us about your experiences specifically with that and whether you face the same kind of uh, disconnect or difference in your own challenges compared to other people,
Mhm.
especially in technology.
So, right. So I think that for off the bat, I would have to start with saying that the tech community generally is quite open to people and ideas out there. You can always criticize it for its diversity, but I think for the most part, there are a lot of efforts to integrate all kinds of people, not just people of immigrant background, but people of different genders, people with disabilities. So it's trying to accommodate more diversity. But starting up with my own personal experiences, I moved to the US thinking that I would, for example, I would major in CS. So that was kind of my goal. I started off with a CS curriculum my first semester of freshman year. And I remember my professor, his name was Michael, and he calls me in to his office and he says, Taimur, I think you're going to fail this course. And I was like, what? Really? I was thinking about studying CS, like this was my thing. This is why I came here for. So um, it was quite the beginning was quite frightening because of all that new stuff that I had to deal with, because of the change and the shift in the cultures and the educational system. I think I struggled in the beginning, specifically with people who were studying tech because of all the language that was being used, all the kind of standardization of things that was completely new. And there's a lot of docs on software, but there's not on a lot of docs on like how the learning part kind of happens and how that may be your own responsibility and all of that. So that was quite new for me. The way, especially Americans, were treating tech and how they learned it was a very different experience coming from where I was coming, where it was mostly kind of makeshift, your own. You were learning things kind of on your own in your own time, and not so much of this like really. Maybe it was just also that college was different, looking back now, but at the time it was way too structured for what I was used to. So
Right.
I think my professor didn't really see that. He calls me and he's like, Taimur, you might fail the course. And I was like, hey, Mike, I wanted to study CS. So that's where I started. Kind of got disheartened after that. But I kept, doing my own thing, kept learning. I ended up majoring in physics and geosciences. So I had a double major. I did a lot of CS in college and I learned a lot of things on my own. And at that time, I had an idea that I wanted to kind of try out with this, with our startup, as you mentioned, Adsata, where we're converting webcams into eye trackers. This in like really in a short, um, in a short sentence. Um, when I moved to Germany, the first time was 2016, my junior year, and it was through an exchange program between U.S. and American and German government for exchange of research. I came here, and the city I'm in, Halle, I saw that there was opportunity, that having a startup here, the support system was somehow felt a lot more open to the way I was used to things compared to how it was in the US. Um, and right about that time, like 2016, 2017, is when I had the idea. I came here and I saw how things were kind of shaping up here. Comparing that to my previous experiences, I think I was, that's where it's sort of the whole tech thing really became a thing for me, where I dove in. I started my own startup. It grew. We're now 5 people, going for the sixth person. So yeah, I think there were going back to the point with the challenges with tech communities in general. To just sum it up, I would say that it has been mostly the shift in culture and bureaucracy and kind of like the logistics of it that's made it the toughest. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Well, I mean, I'm amazed, but I relate so much, especially to the experience. It's one thing when a peer or a quiz tells you that you're not doing this well, but it's another thing when a professor does.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I've had experiences where somehow I failed or was on the track to fail out of a course, and I ended up majoring in anyway.
Hmm.
But I wonder if that was the kind of lesson that I didn't get at the time, but got much later as an entrepreneur.
Hmm.
you're gonna have to face failure sooner or later. And that was just
Mm,
kind of failure for a young person. Like grade failure and scholastic failure was something we just couldn't handle.
mhm.
But
Especially in this new college environment where you're, like so much expectation. You want to get things done. You have so much motivation, and the first semester, your professor's calling you in, saying, "Hey, you're not gonna pass this course if you don't change things."
right.
And you're right. It's always a challenge, and I learned more about tech by doing it than I would say more by being in a classroom environment and kind of forcing myself to sit there and kind of churn through books day in day out. I ended up doing that anyway, but on my own accord, in my own time, and kind of at my own pace. And I think that was sort of the difference.
Got you, got you.
Mm.
So I have one more question for you, which
Sure.
is, you know, your work at university and also your work into the present with your company now. Still, the community that you work in is very important to you, clearly based
Mm,
on
mm.
what it is today. And what kind of changes or what kind of things do you hope that people within your community, or when it comes to community building, keep in mind when it comes to working with new immigrants
Mm.
who are aspirational just like you and hope to be part of it?
I'm glad you asked me this question. If you were to, and you do ask my opinion on this, I think, or if I were to pinpoint one thing, it would be to be sensitive to the idea that this person might do things in a way that will be different, and to kind of leave room for this person to, or leave time and room, so time and space, for this person to kind of get adjusted into the community. I mean, don't just do work stuff with them, do other stuff, kind of introduce them to sort of the general idea of work, where the communities you're living in, introduce them to some of the methods and the background behind methods. How did some people ended up, like this whole idea of agile development and like the sprints and everything. Like this is quite daunting when you're coming from a place where it's not really a thing. And I think to have that expectation that everyone was going to just naturally fall into that, um, even if they're like the greatest, programmer on the planet, it's quite tough. So the one thing I would say is that if you have someone new around you, give them the room and space to sort of explore, but also to kind of guide them so that they end up, even if they take their own kind of route, that they end up on the same path as you.
Wow, wow.
Mm.
Well, I mean, it sounds straightforward and it sounds self-evident in so many communities, but a lot of things in my view that are self-evident require diligence and require discipline and patience and time, but are critical and worthwhile when it comes to exploring these things. We've come to the end of our talk, Taimur, and I would love to give you a proper opportunity for you to talk about whatever you like. Call it a shameless plug, if you will. The
All
floor
right.
is yours. Go for it.
All right. Well, if I were to talk about anything, it's been great to come to a country. So this is a thought that I've recently had. I grew up in Pakistan. I went to the U.S. and what I realized that because of the past with like the British system that was there for hundreds of years in Pakistan, I could kind of relate to things in the U.S. because there was that sense of English as a language, but also the sense of things that was somehow adding up. When I moved to Germany, because the language is completely different, it has no past whatsoever to do, has nothing to do with Britain. Things just kind of felt completely new, and that was interesting. I would suggest to people that if you haven't been to a place where things are just absolutely different, try it. It kind of wakes you up.
Cool.
Mm.
What a lovely shameless plug is come to Germany or come to a non-Commonwealth country.
Yeah, come to a non-communal country.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us, especially from Germany, and sharing so much of your wisdom as well. I have this feeling that your particular journey is going to connect with a lot of people who are with our company and certainly with our community. And I want to thank everyone else for watching or listening to this as well. You can check out more of our talks on YouTube or on our podcast. And if you want to check out more about Educative, you can go to educative.io. So on behalf
Yes.
my name is Lee. Thank you so much for participating and happy learning, everybody.
Thank you, Lee.
Thank you for watching this episode of Educative Session. If you liked this episode, please like it and share with your community. To stay informed about the latest sessions, subscribe to our channel by clicking the button above. Check out our podcast at educativesessions.podbean.com in the description below. Lastly, if you're tech curious, check us out at educative.io. Happy learning, everyone.